Hi. Today we're going to be talking about hashtag ToonMe. Now this is a reference to a trend that's going on with Instagram artists right now, where you take a selfie and break down the face roughly in half and then render one portion of it in some sort of an artistic style. Typically cartoon, but I've seen some other takes on the genre, and I chose to go with more of a oil painterly type portrait with my version of this. Since I was doing that, I also took some cues here from the picture that I chose with the tea mug that says Dog Dad, and decided to kind of at the last minute throw in a little quick cartoonish sketch of my dog Snoopy kind of hanging over my shoulder. We'll see him come up in a couple of minutes or so. Now, a word on the method. All I really did was lower the opacity of the picture and then use that to trace a line drawing and then pull out some colors so that way I could ultimately paint in the portrait over top of the photo itself. Now, I think this is a great opportunity to talk about tracing in general. It's a hot topic amongst the artist community. It has been for a very long time, ever since prior to, internet or prior to YouTube. Our artists have struggled to kind of talk about this concept of tracing, at least ever since I've been alive. And I think the reality of it here is that tracing gets a bad name, but everybody does it, at least in some way, shape, or form. Now, there's an ethical standard to apply here, and I will get to that a little bit later. But let me just kind of put it out there that, again, everybody traces. I do it all the time. I take work that I work on, something like an original sketch or a rough layout, and I will trace over top of it in order to get a better version of the thing that I created initially. And I've done that quite a bit with digital art as well. That's the beauty of having layers and the ability to change opacity. You can take a rough sketch, lay over top of it, get a more refined version, and refine over several different layers until you get something that you feel like you're ready to take to the next stage. That's one of the beautiful things about digital art and what makes it so forgiving to somebody who is trying to learn how to create better pieces of work. But even prior to digital art, tracing was a norm for a lot of people. I myself learned an old technique back in, I think, middle school, where you took a drawing or some sort of a piece that you wanted to kind of trace or copy, and then take a number 2 pencil and kind of rub it on the back to create almost like a graphite type paper that you can then trace over and create a copy onto another piece, like a canvas or something like that. This is something that is an old school technique that the great masters used to do back in the early Renaissance and stuff like that. So again, tracing has existed for eons, really. And the only real question is the ethics of it. So when I speak to the ethics of it, what I'm referring to is that it's okay to trace as long as it's your own work. It's also okay to trace as long as you're learning from it and not presenting it as your work. And that's where the ethics comes in, right? You can trace your own stuff, no harm there, because it is ultimately originally yours in its content and from its inception. But to trace somebody else's work is okay too, as long as you're not presenting it as your own. Tracing somebody else's work is a great way to get an idea of how basic shapes line up, how anatomy works if you're trying to create human form or animals or something similar. And if you don't do those sorts of things, it can be very difficult to learn those basics of proportion or even foreshortening and perspective and things like that. Every great artist has learned off a master at some point or another, and that meant that tracing was probably a part of it at some point too. But again, the line gets drawn where you take a tracing and present it as your own work. And I feel like I am seeing a little bit of that. I don't want to call out names or channels, but I do have to admit that I've seen YouTube videos where somebody has begun the video with a line drawing already complete. And there's no other video kind of showing you where that line drawing came from. I have a large suspicion in a lot of those cases, that line drawing was traced. And no credit is ever really kind of given in a lot of those instances either. Now, I don't want to get into the drama of it. Like I said, I'm not mentioning anybody by name or anything like that. I will just say that I think there is a line to be drawn at that particular time and place where somebody's using somebody else's work. And I'll just leave it at that. Moving on from that topic, I will also mention this. I'd love to see other people try out this hashtag ToonMe thing, especially if you're just learning digital art for the first time, or even if you just want to kind of experiment with art. And again, the permission to trace, go for it. Use the photograph as something to trace and learn from, and learn how to kind of build up portraits and drawings of the face and the head of on your own. I'll tell you what I learned out of this one is how to draw that little highlight on the top of the eyelid. Not anything I've really dealt with before, and that's what's so beautiful about this. Tracing over something for an ethical way is a great learning experience, and that little highlight on the eyelid is something I will incorporate into future pieces. I hope you got something out of this today. I hope to hear from you in the comments section. Please, if you haven't done so already, subscribe and share, and I'll have more content posted soon. Thanks a lot. Thanks for stopping by. Take care.